Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I'm your host, Lonnie Jones, and the adventure part is basically just our experiences. And some of those experiences are as mundane as growing up, being married, being a young married couple with a kid, or being a middle-aged couple with grandkids. Some of the experiences will be my adventures as an outdoorsman, a rock climber, a fisherman, a hunter, or my experiences as a police chaplain who's been assigned to a SWAT team for over 30 years. Some of that adventure may even boil down to the idea that there's a belief that I'm a chaotic Jedi. And either way, we'll take the experiences or the adventures and we'll talk about the facts. The facts will lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. Basically, it will be anecdotal wisdom. One cautionary word about the facts is we will tell you the facts just as they happened, but sometimes we'll tell you the facts the way we remember them happening, and sometimes we'll tell you the facts the way we've heard other people tell us the way they remember them happening. In any occasion, it's not an attempt to deceive. There'll be a little bit of embellishment, and it's an all good, clean fun and for learning purposes only. Thank you for keeping up with Jones. Introducing the Bible degree with digital ministry. Paul used the marketplace and the synagogue to reach an expanded audience. We have access to the internet and social media. I once heard it said that when McDonald's introduced the drive-through window, they did not change the Big Mac, only how it was delivered. Faulkner University is now offering a new digital ministry track for their Bible degree. Faulkner's degree provides training in understanding and teaching the gospel, alongside training that will allow students to create quality digital content. Opportunities for evangelism in the digital spaces is unlimited, and this is innovative ministry education for our contemporary culture. One of the instructors is a 2-time Emmy-winning former ESPN designer. Members of the Church of Christ could be eligible for the full tuition Jack Zorn Scholarship in order to pursue this special area of study. For more information, contact admissions at faulkner.edu. That is admissions at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a digital partner with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. TKM Incorporated in Moss, Tennessee is a construction company that specializes in erosion control, seeding, and soil, hydroseeding, hydromulch, minor excavation, and silt fence. They also provide traffic control and construction signs. Their business is keeping people safe, but their passion, their mission, is they wish that all men could be saved. TKM has adopted the nickname the King's Men because as they serve you, they also serve the King. If they could provide any of their services for you, please contact them at 931-243-3958. That is 931-243-3958. Or you can contact them on the net at tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. That is tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. TKM Incorporated is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. They sat around. Some were on crude wooden benches. Some of them sat actually on the weight benches. Others leaned against the walls or lockers. Some of them slumped in the floor. They wore cleats, padded thigh pants, and tight t-shirts. Some were already taped up for the upcoming game. The only thing that remained was for them to don their shoulder pads, helmets, and jerseys. The jerseys hung or sat with the shoulder pads already in them, and they were reminiscent of the yoreverent, the armor stand, literally, of the samurai. The helmets and shoulder pads already in place, ready to be put on at the time of the game. I'm a small person. I'm a little thick. I'm a little muscular, and by any real measure, by any real standard, I'm small for a man. years and years before, and I mean years before, I was 22 years old, and I was fit. I was lean and fit. I would leave work and go over to Madison Academy when they were on Max Luther Drive, and I would dress out and I would play defense for the Madison Academy Mustangs as part of their practice squad. I still have scars on one of my hands from a young man named Dwayne Quarter. That very first play, he ran through the line and put his helmet into my knuckles, and he said, "I've always wanted to do that to a preacher." It was close to that time. It was during that time that I was dressing out and helping the Mustangs practice. There was an NFL strike. And during the NFL strike, when the NFL teams came to a different city, they would pick up non-union or non-NFL or scab players at some of the games. And I was talking to Jackie. I said, if the Raiders come to Atlanta and they play the Falcons, I'm going to go down to Atlanta and offer to play. My dear sweet wife and source of all my humiliation, source of my humility, glibly said, "Do you realize how small you look with those football boys from the academy? Just think how tiny you'd look in the NFL." So you get it. I'm in a locker room full of varsity football players. I'm wearing only my jeans and a pullover shirt, and my size or lack thereof was therefore accentuated. What could I possibly tell these young men about football? I mean, all of them could squat twice my body weight. Some of them could probably bench press that and much, much more. I'd been asked to speak to them before their game, and I walked in and I took a small bundle, 20 to 30 feet of uncoiled rope, and I laid it on a training table. I looked around the room and I just simply asked, "Who benches the most?" Almost unanimously, all the heads turned to look at one burly lineman whose white t-shirt strained over the girth of his stomach, and the sleeves fluttered at the sides because they'd been torn to fit over his massive biceps. The shirt was in stark contrast to the deep color of his skin, and his pride was obvious. He proudly stood and he grinned this electric smile. I looked him dead in the eye and I said, "Are you strong enough to push this rope off the table?" He was almost insulted. He didn't even answer. With cavalier alacrity, he straightened one arm and flicked his wrist and unseated the rope almost casually. It unbundled and then rebundled itself on the floor in a tangled heap. Nobody was impressed, including myself. The task I'd given him was almost insulting to his size and almost insulting to his strength. After the rope settled down and everybody looked with a dumbfounded face like, "Well, duh," I said, "Now push it back up onto the table." The sparkling smile never faded, but he simply said, I can't." And then I said, "Well, just pick up one end and lead it around the room and then pull it back onto the table." And this he did. Not with a grip of his massive hand, but he simply pinched the end of the rope between two fingers, his forefinger and his thumb, and he walked around the room. And as he walked around the room, the rope, quote unquote, followed him. It followed him over the weights, over the weight benches, over the cleats, over the boys, around the squat rack and between the other players. And eventually he brought it full circle and it came to rest on top of the table. I spoke to the young man in a hushed tone. I said, "That, my friends, is the difference in power and influence. One of them has nothing to do with size or strength. The biggest man in the room does not have the most power, but the man in this room who has the most influence does indeed have the most power. A coach or a team captain can force you to do many things. He can make you lift and squat and sprint and run and bench press and do burpees. But the person on this team who decides that they will live in such a way and act in such a way that they will inspire you, that they will influence you to think differently about yourself, about your value, about your contribution, about your team, and about each other. The person who can inspire you to do your best, to do more, or just try to do better. The person who inspires you wields immeasurable power. You see, it's the difference between power over people or power with people. Mao Zedong, that's spelled Maozedong, or sometimes known by the romanization of his name, Mao Zedong, Maotsettung. This particular quote-unquote leader said, political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. This man probably understood force and coercion and intimidation and violence and extortion, but he knew nothing about real power. After he died, his quote-unquote power died with him. No one is afraid of a dead man. But what about a legacy? What about influence? What about power that persists? What about power that perseveres? What about power that self-propagates even after one has died? Power with people, not over people. In my youth and in my arrogance, the very first time that I took a knife away from a person, this person had a knife and he was unskilled with it and he was threatening someone else with it. And as I confronted him, I arrogantly said, a knife is no bigger than the man who is holding it. But in your case, I'll make an exception. Now, please understand, my act was foolish and arrogant and full of hubris on my part. It does not require a skilled person to hurt someone if they have a knife or a weapon of any kind. In fact, it doesn't require skill. But even though I shouldn't have done that, even so I shouldn't have been as arrogant and full of myself as I was, even though that my action was probably stupid, the words I said remain true. A knife is actually no bigger than the man wielding it. And the same is true about guns, about money, about words, about attitudes, about thought, about beliefs, about decisions, and definitely about power. Power's power. Its uses are in the hands of the user. Words are simply words. Ideas are simply ideas. They can't make people do or not do. They cannot make others feel or not feel, believe or not believe. Now, we often use words and ideas and we use them as excuses for my behavior. But once you say words, those words become mine. You have a responsibility for how you use them, and I have a responsibility for how I use them. And once those words become mine, once you say them and I hear them, I then have the power to alter their power. I get to discern between true and untrue, genuine or false. I get to choose between, is this an attempt to influence, guide, teach, inspire, control, or manipulate? I get to take the words you said and I can label them as benign or malignant, benevolent or malicious. But based on what I think about words, not the words in and of themselves, but the value I give them, I then make decisions. And the ability to make that decision for myself is the true definition of personal power. The true power of leadership is an influence. Not power over people, but power with people. It's not pushing the rope, but leading or guiding the rope. You see, if I force you to think a certain way, forced conclusions are one-directional. You can't push a rope back up onto the table. You can only force it off. Influence, power with people, is not in making others do, not do, believe or not believe, feel or not feel. The true power of words are in the ideas and the ideas are not forced upon or demanded of others. The true power of words are that they have the ability to appeal to the intellect as well as to appeal to the emotion. Power over people is forcing someone to do the things that they have not thought out clearly. That's manipulation. You're taking advantage of an immature, unsophisticated person, and you're using their misuse of information, or you're using their misuse of emotion to control them, and that is not power. It is manipulation. Facts and emotions can both be miswielded. They can both be misused. And misuse of information and misuse of emotion, misuse of truth, misuse of facts is a misuse of power. True influence is not control. True influence is not causing someone to do, not do. True influence, power with people, is behaving or speaking in such a way that one can lead, inspire, or cause others to think. And thinking for oneself opens up a world of power that the power parasites are those who want all the power for themselves. They want your power. They want their power. They want to control not just how you think, but what you think. And thinking for yourself is the thing that they fear the most, more than anything else. They fear that others will think differently than the thoughts that they prescribe. And by thinking differently, they will exercise their freedom and come to different conclusions. They want power over you, your thoughts, your values, your decisions, and your lives. They are the ones who will use false power, force, coercion, violence to silence the true, authentic, influential power of rational thinking. Once I think, I can decide. And decisions that are based on truth and facts and intellectual honesty are decisions that create intentional living, not reactionary living. Do not mistake autonomy for freedom, and do not confuse consequences with retaliation. All mature people should have autonomy, but that autonomy does not make us immune from consequences, and those two words are often misused and misapplied. Influence is not making someone do, not do, say, or not say. That's just manipulation and control. Real power, real influence is the ability to stimulate someone to think. Not dictate what they think, but simply encourage and facilitate that they think. You offer them all the information, not just one side, but both sides, and you encourage that they think. Leadership empowers. It does not manipulate, control, or force. Being empowered to think and encouraged to think and then to decide what we do with what we think is the true power of freedom. Those who do not want you to think do not want you to be free. And those who do not want you to be free do not want you to think. If we allow freedom of thought to be pushed off the table, those who pushed it off the table are not only unable to push it back, they are unwilling to do so. In order to have power over people, they did not want freedom of thought on the table in the first place. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use two large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707. 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3 W's and a dot worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.